Elif Trondsen leitet das Unternehmen Strategic Business Insights, das mit der Stanford University verbunden ist und IT-Firmen in Kalifornien berät. Dr. Trondsen ist weltweit einer der führenden Bildungsexperten für Digitales und publiziert zu den Themen EdTech und E-Learning. In seinen Arbeiten geht der Ökonom der Frage nach, wie sich Ausbildung im digitalen Zeitalter verändern und wie Europa die Unternehmenskultur des Silicon Valleys übernehmen kann. Elif Trondsen, you're a Silicon Viking. What makes you that?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine me being a Viking, you know, when you think about Vikings. And in fact, when I look at young people in Norway now, they seem to be all close to 2 meters. And people say, what happened to you? and I'm a miniature Viking. But the organization Silicon Vikings is a very interesting one, I think. And in fact, it was a well-hidden secret for many years. We're 20 years old, but I think for at least half of that time, it was kind of a small club, or mostly people from Sweden, who started Silicon Vikings.
What does Silicon Vikings actually do? I mean, there's Silicon Valley and there's the northern countries, right?
Yeah, so it's a professional networking organization that we try to connect and assist, and it's all volunteers that are involved in it. We don't get paid, and we try to assist people that come from the Nordics and the Baltics, that come to Silicon Valley. It's a very complex ecosystem. So if you want to come in, you represent a company or you're an academic who want to connect into the Valley, it can be a challenge. So the people who are on the board of Silicon Vikings, we've been there for years and years. I've been in the Valley for about 40 years, and I built up a considerable network. So I try to help out to connect people into the right and make it easier for them to find the right people to talk to. If it's a company that's seeking funding, we try to think of venture capitalists or angel investors who might be interested in the company and so on.
But just lots of projects actually with Silicon Vikings have to do with e-learning and EdTech. Has the learning environment changed? I mean, of course it has, but how has it changed compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah, and in fact, over the last 8 months or so, I've been involved in one project in particular that is run by Silicon Vikings, and it's funded by an interesting organization that's headquartered in Oslo called Nordic Innovation. So they funded the project, and we are trying to create a Nordic EdTech community, basically connecting the EdTech companies in the different Nordic companies. Because many of the Norwegian companies didn't know what the Finns were doing, the Finns didn't know what the Danes were doing, and so on. And we think that it's important for these companies to connect to each other and talk about what is going on, and maybe jointly come over to the Valley.
What are some of the movements that are happening in the EdTech market right now? What are some of the shifts, some of the big shifts?
Well, there are so many things happening. Of course, there's a ton of different tools and technologies and platforms. And I talked in the presentation, I talked a little bit about MOOC platform. That's just one set of platforms. There are other platforms called learning management systems that companies have been building for many, many years. And these are kind of administrative systems for schools and school districts to organize the teaching process. And many students don't particularly care for LMSs because they are more administrative than learner focus. So that's a new trend now in LMSs. Build better systems that are more focused on the learner as opposed to the administrator. So that's one type. And then there are many tools that are being built and have been built to enable better content creation, for instance. Content, of course, is still an important part of learning, and maybe create content that is more engaging and more dynamic. So, for instance, learning through a simulation where students can maybe imagine that they're running a company through a simulation and take actions and seeing the results of those actions, and then afterwards review the set of actions that you took and see, oh, why did I do that? If I'd done something else, maybe the company would have done better and so on. So there are many types of simulations that are now being built, and so you learn through simulations.
So that's an exciting future that our kids have ahead of us. Elif, Trondsen, thank you very, very much for being here. Und wenn Sie weitere Informationen möchten zu den NZZ X-Days, dann gehen Sie online auf www.nzz-xdays.com.